Hello React Native developers, what is going on? We are back, and in this episode we are adding a new technique to our gestures and animation tool belt. So welcome to Can It Be Done in React Native. This week we play our favorite songs with style. Hello React Native developers, I hope you are well and I hope that you had a great summer. William here, recording from beautiful Zurich, Switzerland. Great to be back. And in this week's episode, we are looking at the Spotify player. So we have it here at the bottom minimized, and I can swipe up to have it in the full view. I release the gesture, it snaps nicely to the top, can snap nicely also to the bottom, and I can also tap here to open it, or tap the chevron down icon to close it. And when I first saw this example, I got really excited. I got really excited for two reasons. The first reason is that here there is a technique we haven't seen before, and I'm so excited that we get to explore it together. So we have this view that we can drag and we snap it in one position or the other. This is our bread and butter. We do this in almost every episode. But what we haven't seen before is how we can combine this gesture and animation with an imperative command, meaning that we have our gesture and animation, but if I tap, I can imperatively set the view to a certain position. And then obviously it interoperates nicely with the gesture. And in the vanilla animated API of React Native, there are these imperative commands we can use: start an animation, stop an animation, and so on. But in Reanimated, since we do everything declaratively, we are not used to do these things imperatively. Not only that, but we are also not used to have these imperative commands work very nicely with gestures. So I'm very excited that we get to explore this technique. I think it's extremely useful for many use cases and other user interactions to implement. And the second reason I'm very excited is that this is an extremely requested example. So you guys are sending me amazing episode suggestions. Please keep sending me great suggestions. My email is in the video description. And I'm glad there are a lot of episode suggestions about fancy bottom sheet, and I'm glad we get to do one and to develop some expertise in developing this particular type of user interaction. So how would we do this in React Native? Well, so this view has two translation points, one which is at 0 right now, and one which is at 1/8 of the screen minus 8 of the tab bar. Pretty straightforward. And we can drag, so these are the two snap points. We make the view draggable, and it snaps to one point or the other. So this is something we've done before. We're pretty confident in how we can build these things. And then, so here if I swipe slightly, you see that there is another view which is overlaid on top of the bottom sheet with some opacity. So here the opacity of this view is 1, and it becomes 0. And you could also see that so if this is the size of the minimized player, the overlaid view is somewhat higher, has a bigger height than the size of the minimized player. So here maybe there's a third view we need to overlay with a pointer event sent to none, so that when the opacity is 0, I can still, you see here, press the touches. And then what we're going to do is that we're going to set an offset, an animation value called offset, which is going to decide the position of the player, so top, bottom, and it's also when we spring, we want to know where. So when we release the gesture and we finish the animation, we want to know where we are. In order for us, when we start again the gesture, we memorized where the bottom sheet is. So we're going to use an offset to do that, but we're going to also use it to imperatively set the view up or down. So here, if I press the button, we're going to modify the offset value so that automatically the view moves to the bottom or move to the top. So here we have three components: the offset, which we're going to use to drive the imperative commands, the gestures, and the animation. And these three components need to work very well together. The animation needs to be completely interruptible, and we need to be able, on top of a button, to direct nicely the animation. So what do you guys think? Can it be done in React Native? Let's have a look. Before we get started, two things. First, if you are looking to learn the fundamentals of gestures and animations, I just released a new course at startreactnative.dev. My goal with this course is to provide you with all the tools and knowledge necessary in order to build incredible user experiences in React Native. I will be updating the course every month, and hopefully after following this curriculum, the examples we are building on the channel should appear completely trivial to you. So if you are interested, please check it out at startreactnative.dev. And if you like the show and you would like to support the show, you can buy me a coffee, and I will make sure to treat your requests for the Can It Be Done in React Native series in priority, as well as giving you access to the private GitHub repository where I tinker with all these examples. Links are in the video description. All right, guys, let's get started. So here I created a boilerplate project using Expo init. You can find the link of the boilerplate project in the video description in case you want to follow along with this example. So you should recognize this view because we built it in a previous episode of Can It Be Done in React Native. And what I added on top of it is this bottom bar, which you see here, the mini player, which is the part you see here, which is overlaid on top of the big player, which you see here. So I have a state, is the player up or not, and I have a set up method to put it up. So up, down, but here you see you cannot drag the view. There is no animation. And so maybe if I set the opacity of the mini player to 1, you see it here, right? But then it becomes invisible if it's up. So here it is. So the first thing we're gonna do is to make this view here draggable, and then we're gonna make it snap to either 0 or 8 minus the height of the tab bar, minus the size of the minimized player, and then we will add a command on the button to do it imperatively through the buttons. So maybe the first thing I'm gonna do is actually to remove the state here. Just gonna put maybe opacity 0 and just return nothing here. And I'm gonna wrap the view into a pan gesture handler. So the first child of a pan gesture handler needs to be an animated view. So I'm gonna do that. And we need to give it a gesture handler as parameter. So we have a utility function from redash to do that. Let me import, so we need to import pan gesture handler from React Native gesture handler. We need animated from React Native reanimated. So let me import animated. We need values. So we're gonna need to create a couple of animation values. So the first one we need is the translation Y, right? Because we're gonna move the view on the Y axis. So I'm gonna create translation Y, We're going to need the velocity, and we need the velocity in order to find out where we need to snap the view. So velocity y, and we're going to need the gesture state to know when we finish the animation and we need to snap. So state equals new value, and the initial state is state.undetermined. And we can use these values to create a gesture handler. So we're going to use on gesture event from redash, and we pass the animation values as parameter. This is a simple helper function to generate the proper properties to the pan gesture handler method. Just a shortcut. I need to import this guy, and maybe here, just for now, just as a test, I'm gonna bind translate y to translation y and translate bottom tab, which is the bottom tabs disappears once we slide the view to the full screen. I'm gonna set it to 0. So right now it's gonna be always visible. Let's have a look. Oh, sorry about that. So I can drag the view, perfect. And I can drag it in, yeah. And then, so let me just, yeah, okay. So we're gonna associate this gesture to a spring animation when it finishes, and redash provides utility functions in order to do that. And this function is called with spring. And we need to pass as parameter the state of the gesture. The value is translation y, the velocity is velocity y, and we need the snap points, of course, which are snap bottom top, which is 0, and snap bottom, which is height minus height of the tab bar minus height of the minimized player. Let's have a look. So up, snaps back to the top, snaps exactly where it should be. You see it's very bouncy. I have here a spring config, which should be a bit less bouncy. Let's see. And I can pass it as parameter to the spring function. So it's a bit better. Still very bouncy, I guess. But we can just play with the spring config to make it less bouncy. And then what we can do here is add the opacity of the minimized player. So I'm gonna just create a value called opacity. So, and we interpolate, oops, sorry. Interpolate on translate y input range. So we go from snap bottom minus height minimize player height to snap bottom and output range. So when we're at snap bottom, minus minimize player height should be 0, becomes invisible, and it should be 1 once we're at snap bottom. Is that I need to import interpolate. Let's have a look. Oh, I think might be because I forgot to use animated view here. Let's have a look. So I drag it. It kind of looks good. So what we need to do is we're gonna add another overlay. You see, I mean, it looks strange right here. So I'm gonna add an overlay. So an animated view with an absolute fill. And so again, some sort of opacity. I'm gonna call it overlay opacity. And so that looks good. And pointer events none, so it doesn't catch any touches. And so I'm gonna absolute fill object here. And I'm gonna create overlay opacity, which also we interpolate let's have a look. But oh yeah, of course I need to set some sort of background color. I'm gonna use this one. And should I use actually the same opacity values, or do I need to tweak the opacity values to be different? Let's see. So I go down. Yes, I need to be specific. So I'm gonna set from snap bottom minimize player height, let's say ×2, to snap bottom minimize player height, and we go from 0 to 1. That looks good. Let's have a look. So go down and then I pull. Yeah, that looks good, right? Perfect. Very cool. So now, okay, go down. Now we can translate the bottom bar. So translate bottom tab. We're going to interpolate on translate Y. And so here I need to use an animated view. And so input range, we go from snap bottom, so snap bottom minus maybe tab bar 8 to snap bottom output range. So when we're at snap bottom, we are at 0, and when we are at snap bottom minus tab bar 8, we translate by tab bar 8. And we need, I mean, yes, we absolutely need here an extrapolate, clamp. And I think, even though it was not required, it would be a bit cleaner to add it here and here as well, right? Because opacity shouldn't be more than 1 or less than 0. And I need to import extrapolate. Okay. So the tab bar here translates perfectly. It kind of looks good. Up. And here we need to add some sort of clamp to the value. So maybe we can clamp the spring. So to 0, so snap bottom, snap top is the minimum and the maximum is snap bottom. Clamp we get from redash. So it's just a min max. Okay, so here it's clamped and I go up and down. Perfect. So now let's do the buttons. So I can create an animated value called offset. So this is what we're going to use to drive the animations from the buttons. So offset is a new animation value. And so I can start to snap top, and it means it's going to start at the top. So the initial state is going to be at the top or at the bottom. So I can pass offset as parameter of the whispering function. So now it should start at the top. If I say snap bottom, should start at the bottom. Perfect. And so this is what we're going to use to drive the animations from the buttons. So we need two new animation values, one which is go up, one which is go down. So when we press the button, we set the animation value to be 1 for go down if we want to go down, 1 for go up if we want to go up. So go up is a new animation value, which is 0, and it's going to be 0 or 1. And go down is a new animation value, which is also 0 or 1. When we press on the up button, we set the animation value of go up to be 1. And if we press the go down, we set the go down animation value, set value to be 1. Now, here it's complaining because it thinks the type is animated value 0, so we can just declare it here. Animated value is 0 or 1. Now we need to declare some animations. So I'm going to use the use code hook from reanimated. No dependencies, and I'm going to put a block of instructions. So I need to import use code and block. Now if we need to go up, we are gonna set the offset value to some animation functions. So offset, and we're going to use a timing function, duration of, let's say, 60 milliseconds, for instance. And we go from, so if we go up, we go from snap bottom to snap top. Timing, here we use timing from redash, which provides some utilities in order to easily build timing functions. Set condition we need from reanimated. And once the animation is over, we need to set go up to 0 because we are done. How do we find out if the animation is over? By passing a clock as parameter. Once the clock is stopped, it means the animation is over. We can stop the animation. So we're going to pass a clock as parameter. And if the clock is not running, so if not clock running clock, then we can set go up to 0. So we need to import clock running and not. And we need to create a clock, of course. So let's do that. And let's have a look. So I press the button, it nicely animates to the top. So you see here the with spring function is really well organized because it can really update the position, the value translate wide depending on the value of the offset when we update it, and it nicely handles the gestures and the spring animations. So here we really have these three components, the offset, the gesture, and the spring animation working very well together. The snap point, so where to snap is decided via the velocity value. So everything is super well orchestrated. And these are provided by the redash helpers. So React Native redash is a library function with helpers for gestures and animations with gesture handler and reanimated. So now we can do the same to go down. So I'm just gonna copy paste this. If go down is true, at the end we start the animation. Here we will go to snap top, from snap top to snap bottom. Perfect. Let's have a look. So here I press the button, I go up. I press the button, I go down. I decide to do manually something. That's not a problem. So here I go down manually, go up. So pretty cool. I can make it maybe a bit shorter. So up, and here it is. Pretty cool, right? I think this with spring function is extremely powerful. You can really do a lot of stuff with it. And then again, even simple helper functions like timing that enables us to build a timing function very quickly, pass a clock. So either, you don't need to control the animation, you don't pass a clock as parameter, one will be created for you. If you need to have some sort of control, here we want to set some value once the animation is over. We can pass the clock as parameter. So we really have it's a higher level construct, but we do have some control if we need to have some control. So I hope you guys enjoyed this example. I'm looking forward to talk to you guys soon. And in the meantime, happy hacking.